who both have lost our hair over the decades of migrating people from Project Server to Project Online to Sensei IQ. We are going to take you through a bit about this and sort of set the scene. Now, the session is particularly about the migration itself. It's not so much about what you would go to or why. We will cover some of that. We have done previous sessions last year on that, and we will be reaching out to a lot of you who've asked specific questions, and we'll get back to you and we'll help you answer those questions, so you will not be forgotten about. So I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to take you through some news.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I hope everybody can hear me. Hi, team. Just very quickly, my 2 cents worth of some exciting announcements when it comes to Sensei and Sensei IQ. Over the last couple of months, we decided to rebrand Sensei IQ and elevate the brand in a more focused way around work management, and as such, we decided to rebrand Sensei IQ into a new name, and that name's called Altus. We'll talk about that in a second. These changes will take effect in your tenant as of the 28th of February. Most of you have actually been already contacted by our marketing and sales team just to outline why that is. So from now on, when we are talking about Sensei's solution, Sensei IQ, we will actually be talking about Altus. So these changes will take effect by the end of February. And really what you will see from a user experience perspective is predominantly the name and icon changes. I would like to point out that there is no immediate change to the functionality and capability, but be rest assured, our product team is working hard on justifying the word Altus, which really means elevating your work. So yeah, so if you log on at the end of February, and you will see that the name has changed from Sensei IQ to Altus, don't be concerned. That goes along with our new brand of Altus. Also, if you have any questions or if we can assist you also in the communication of the new name, please do reach out, and we are more than happy to help you.
Also,
all right, Ryan, over to you.
Mark, adding one thing there, we often get a question around, is this a change to Sensei? So Sensei is the company, there's no change, there's no commercial change. We have not been sold or bought or anything. This is a rebrand to, as Mark said, elevate the product, and therefore it's good for everyone in the direction we're going in. It's just a rebranding. There's no change to anything. Okay, so we had heaps of questions, over 40 questions. I've gone through them. Some were more aligned to this particular session than others. What we've done is we've grouped them up, and we have got them into these groupings. And these groupings are, why do we have to do this in the first place? I'm happy with Project Online, leave me alone. What are my options if I have to move? What's the process to actually move, the process of migration? And what do I need to think about in terms of migration? What are some sort of big picture things to think about and some risks? We are going to, as we go through, deal with these questions. You'll see little questions in the corner on some of the slides. And then, as I said, some of them are very specific, detailed ones that are relevant to you, maybe not to the whole group. We will be getting back to all of those people who've sent questions in. Okay, so why do we have to do this at all? We were very happy with Project Online. What is going on? Project Online is the queen of project and portfolio management systems. It's the grand dame. It's been there in one form or another for 25 years, probably. Okay.
35.
35.
Yeah.
Sorry, with the age, I just forget these things. Okay. It's actually dated. The technology is moving on, but the way people think about how to do these things, Mark mentioned work management, so elevating to work management, the way people think about these and what they expect from a work management system is more than they expect from just a scheduling type system. So Project Online is, if you didn't already know, coming to end of life. It is now legacy. We need to think about what's beyond that and not invest into it. Now, over those years and years, we have had MS Project. Microsoft has gone through a series of evolutions, largely a SharePoint and schedule-centric system, which is what a lot of you have got now. And then we got to Project Online. So 2013, Sensei actually did the first migration into Project Online in Australia. It hadn't changed from Project Server, which hadn't changed from Project Server, which hadn't changed much from Project Server, and so on. Okay, going forward, it still hasn't changed much. Project Online is kind of the same thing it was for the decades. So now the Power Platform comes about, and this recognition that it's not all about professional schedulers and professional project managers doing 5,000 line schedules anymore. Yes, that is still there. There's no problem with that. But it is also about the wider audience. And this evolution needs to take into account more people doing more work. So there's opportunity, and we are going to focus on that. But before we do that, we just want to get a feel for the room. We're hoping this saying Project Online is coming to an end. So Microsoft has announced an end. Before anyone asks, they have not given a date. We will get a bit further into that. I'm kind of keen, Gemma's going to bring up a poll just to see if anyone isn't aware of it and where people are in terms of their thinking on this already.
Yeah, while the poll is running, Ryan, I think it's also worth mentioning that this is obviously now I think the third session that we had in regards to the Project Online capabilities. Some of the content you may have seen before for those of you who have visited the other parts. And again, I think it's also important to notice that there is no need to push the panic button. Microsoft's actually very good at providing us enough lead time when it comes to that.
I've got a whole panic slide, a don't panic slide coming up too. Mark said you'll get lots of lead time. We have a very clear established process so we can take you through to move you off. This is actually a non-event. It's an opportunity more than anything to adopt new technologies, but it's not actually a need to panic. Gemma, how are we looking? I'm not sure if the poll's in, but I'm not seeing it.
It is. So it's about 52% say aware, but no plans in place yet. I think that's sort of the biggest part. Wasn't aware of it is close to 20% with 17%. Busy planning high level, about 18%. Detailed planning about 6%, and in progress about 4%. So it's a good mixture, but I think the vast majority are saying, well, we know about it, but we don't really know what we should do right now.
Okay, well, we're going to help you understand what you should do. Okay, so you do have options here. Let's talk about part of the reason why and the options going forward. If we think about that evolution, we've alluded to this. Sensei Project Online is a SharePoint solution. It is intrinsically built around MS Project, the scheduling tool. It is really positioned from a Microsoft perspective as the enterprise strategic level tool. Now, having said that, there are certain gaps. It's more of a framework that you start with. What Microsoft has recognized, and Sensei has definitely recognized, is that there are other people out there. There are more informal project managers out there, citizen project managers, and Microsoft does have a tool called Project for the Web that is aimed at them. Very much a task-centric tool more than anything else, so it's not actually meant to be a replacement to Project Online, but Project Online wasn't a full project and portfolio management system either. And then they've also recognized that there are very much informal information workers out there, people doing work using post-it notes, etc., and that's why we have Planner.
Now, I think it also outlines sort of the agile path, right? Whereby, exactly. The classical MS Project is sort of a traditional way, waterfall way, and the need clearly has arisen with agile rising that there are different ways of working and managing that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if we take this further, if we look at it, it's you have three tools, slightly disjointed, but you do have options there. Sensei has taken it further with Sensei IQ, which is now Altus, so same tool. And this is where I want to start answering some of these questions. We recognize that everyone is doing different types of work and everyone has potentially different levels of maturity. And the opportunity is to extend your umbrella out and bring all these people in to give us a true view of all the work within an organization, because all of it matters. It's not only that the big strategic projects are important, the majority of your effort and your cost in an organization is into BAU and operational work, etc. We need to factor that in as well. So from an Altus perspective, and this is the only salesy thing you're going to see, but it's partly just setting the scene in here. We have a solution that covers from the strategic enterprise projects through the complex projects down into the informal projects, looking at the work, initiatives, BAU, not just project. Okay, now, why do we do this? Well, partly because Project Online is coming to an end. Microsoft is a bit flexible or rubbery on the date they give, so there's not actually a date. We're 2 to 3 years away. Okay. What we have is time as a result. We are able to then start looking at things, and our Altus tool is an option. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a process now, and that explains how you physically move to something. It doesn't have, of course, it's going to be Altus because that's the best one, but you can move to something else as well. Okay, but I wouldn't. So options, the options, as we have said, are you can stay purely within the Microsoft camp, but be aware that a lot of you, if you Google this, you will see our Project Online is being replaced with Project for the Web. It's not actually, because this is very much a task-centric tool. There is a lot more to an enterprise project portfolio management solution. And this is why we have built an entire company around this, essentially. Do you need to move to a SaaS or a non-SaaS? And this is an interesting one. There are a lot of SaaS options out there. Our tool is not technically a SaaS tool. It's actually installed into your environment. You get the advantages of it's managed, it's constantly up to date, but you get to control it. You control the data, you look after it all, so you don't have the downside to a SaaS. Okay, so now part of the questions we've had is, well, can we upgrade to anything new, or do we have to, move along the Microsoft path? Well, as I've said, Microsoft has tools you can move to, but they're part of the puzzle. That's almost like saying, can I move from MS Project to something else? I'm going to come back to MS Project now. Let's not panic about that one because there's no problem there. And people have asked, can they move to P6? Yes, you can integrate to P6, not switch move to it. I went to the scheduling tool.
Yeah, also, Ryan, just that, as you said earlier, Project Online as the grand dam really is built on technology from years and years ago, and of course the cloud technology has really opened up a lot of capabilities. So the very clear message from Microsoft as well is the transition from Project Online in the Microsoft world will move into the Power Platform. And that Power Platform really is that digitization of business processes where you can have the underlying building blocks or puzzle pieces to draw your pictures. And really, ultimately, that's what we've been doing also in line with the Microsoft strategy of building a project portfolio management solution, work management solution on top of those Microsoft Power Platforms. And that's very clearly the path that Microsoft recommends all of the users that have Project Online to move that over, to the point that Project for the Web, which is sort of that next path of the schedule capability, is actually built with the data set being part of that Power Platform.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, now, MS Project. Who's afraid? Gemma's going to get the poll up, please, Gemma, on who's afraid of losing. Who thinks they're going to lose MS Project and who's afraid of it? We're going to kind of save the reveal until after the poll ends. The point here, so part of what Mark is saying is that we have a tool that is built using the Microsoft Power Platform because that is part of Microsoft's stated journey going forward. What Sensei have done is taken it further and built a tool, Altus in this case, that actually links to different task execution tools. So you're not, in the old days, you had the older technology with Project Online, you used MS Project or you used nothing. And a lot of people suffered as a result. Now you don't need to suffer anymore. So
yeah,
Let's talk about MS Project. So, Jim, if you can get the poll.
Before we do that, let's just talk about the poll. Very interesting, actually. It started off with, "You can't take it away from me," which is interesting, which actually now has moved, also, of course, still with 11%, "You can't take it away with me," to, well, it's the standard that we have, but, you know, we are open to suggestions that meets our needs more closely. I think it actually goes also with the trend, and if I then look at the other responses, 5%, no one likes it anyway, so so it's good to get rid of it. And then actually 25% say, well, we would rather use a mix of tools. And as you said earlier, MS Project is for the professional project manager. The citizen project manager often finds it overwhelming. Not to mention that, you know, an agile user that is used to DevOps or Jira, or even, you know, the lightweight tools like Trello and Planner, they recognize that the way that we work these days is actually a mixture of different tools. With all of that being said, the need for MS Project definitely does not go away, and the poll actually suggests that too.
And to then emphasize, future here, MS Project is not going away. Project Online is going away. It's the SharePoint-based system, PWA. That thing you install on your desktop, your laptop, the MS Project tool that you do your scheduling, it is in use throughout the world, all over. I couldn't even count the number of licenses. It's not going anywhere. So it will continue. And if you remember from we link into it, as well as all these other tools, including DevOps, Jira, etc. So we have a situation now, a future where someone who has 40 to 50,000 lines of MS Project and it's running over years, and maybe a big capital project, etc., that's fine. You keep going on like that. But the marketing department who needed to do a 2-week-long project, or let's say a couple of months to rebrand something, for example, you don't have to force them into MS Project. And you also don't have to then, as a result, force them to go and find some other tool and not tell you about they put in. You can have them all in the same place. It all integrates together. So I'm going to say it again, MS Project not going anywhere. Don't panic. Project Online going away in a few years. Don't panic. Okay, so you don't have to panic because we've got a process. And we're going to talk about this process of migration, but I'm going to do another poll again to just see what the stress level is around the actual migration. If those of you have really thought about it, to try and see, just is anyone panicking on that? So I'll let Mark read. I can't see. I've got a second screen.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, give us a couple of seconds. With the polls are just coming in. We only have about 3 respondents right now, but I'm sure they're coming in quickly. Look, especially when you guys are using MS Project Online, and I would think the vast majority of you that are on the call have Project Online or a variation of that, from Jumpstart to Empower PPM, or you may even have, you know, configured it yourself. You know, when I look at the respondents right now, there are about 50% that says, we're actually worried because, you know, we customize the solution and now we need to figure out what those implications are. About 36% say, well, we're not worried because we know it can be recreated if needed. 17% say, no, we're not worried, as we kept Project Online just simply out of the box. And then 2% is here, yes, we're worried, but we don't, as we don't know what customizations I actually have. But the vast majority really is sort of still in that worried stage. How can we transfer, how can we move Project Online into, I'm going to call it, into the 21st century world, really?
Okay, well, so we're going to talk about that. Now, when we think about it, there are 3 broad options around this. The first is to actually start with a complete blank slate. You start with a blank sheet. So you spin up something like an Altus, and you then set that up the way you need it, and you essentially create it to support your current process, and you move forward with it, and you manually start putting new projects into it. It doesn't even sound like a migration, but the reason a lot of people do this is because their Project Online has, let's say, the usage has deteriorated, it's stalled, exactly. And this is a chance to reinvigorate everything with something new. It's a very valid strategy.
Yeah, and if you're unsure whether this would be for you, there's a very, very easy test. You just simply create a portfolio status report of all of your projects, and you give this to your boss and you ask them, would you bet your career on that? If the answer to that question is no, then it means that the data that you have in the system may not be worth the effort migrating over. Now, in most of the cases, though, that option may only be the case if you stand up a new PMO, or if you have a particular area where you'd like to actually start from, from a baseline.
And that's actually happening. We're finding in a lot of organizations, they know they have to migrate. And as part of it, instead of migrating what they've got, they are putting it into a new area, getting them on side. And then later, the old area moves into the new area. So now we've got two departments. So different ways of thinking of these things. Now, a second way of doing it is a parallel or hybrid transition. This is where you have both. And you are using some functionality in one, some functionality in the other, and you start to slowly move over. So we let existing projects finish off in the old, we start anything new in the new. We have some clients take it further, and they'll do things like resourcing, and they'll say, well, resourcing was always complicated in MS Project Online, never quite got it going. We need a new, higher level approach. Let's do that in Sensei IQ, but we'll let old projects finish in the one. So you end up with a couple of different approaches to a hybrid.
Yeah, I always like to call this the don't boil the ocean approach. Because these transitions, they can take over time. Unlike other systems, like an accounting system, etc., you can actually run both Project Online with your existing projects and Altus with new projects, where over time, as projects close in Project Online, you can then move new projects into Altus. Now, from a reporting point of view, we can all bring this together so that you still have, of course, the overarching insights and visibility. Most of our customers actually go down this path because they don't want to boil the ocean. They have a need of extending the capability, for example, introducing a new department, or actually introducing the citizen project managers or the agile project managers. And that is actually a very feasible approach that we've seen.
The third is a true migration, what people think of as migrations. This is where we are looking at creating the new system and then physically moving data over from the old to the new. And we will be covering this off a lot. People do still do that as well. There are a few questions around that we're going to cover.
And I think that third question, just quickly, Ryan, is also worth mentioning. If you are comfortable with your Project Online environment and it works for you right now, there is no need for you to change that immediately. But there will come the day where Microsoft will announce the end date of Project Online. They haven't announced any dates yet, but they're working obviously towards that, and understand that the investment made in Project Online can't just simply be switched off. But there will come that day, and that would be the day where we would then think, okay, how can we migrate you from the older technology into the new technology?
Now, having said that, so the day will come, but you could also get ahead of this and you start thinking about, okay, I've got to prepare for migration, but really, what does migration mean to you? For a lot of people, it's a technical reason. As Mark has just said, the day will come, Project Online will end, and you have to be moved by a certain day. So many of our clients are moving now, okay? But why are they moving now? It's partly because they've become stale, they've stalled, partly because they want to just keep moving forward, but also it's about the opportunity. New system supports more than just MS Project. It supports citizen project managers. It also gives new functionality. We have strategy, portfolio, programs, benefits, ideas, business cases, the pipeline, all these new processes that could have always been in Project Online, unfortunately never were. So they complete the system. It's an opportunity to move towards it. So we really need to think not just about the platform. It's a chance to now relook at your process and to relook at your people and actually support them. So migration can be, and ideally you get value if it's more than just a technical move from A to B. So you need to think about a few things. We're going to have a bit more detail now. So we say, okay, it's time. We're going to start planning this migration. So for those of you who are planning, here are things to think about. First of all, because we have a world now where you don't have to use MS Project only anymore, you can use a mix of MS Project plan a project for the web, Jira, DevOps, bring P6 in there, etc. What is your approach to scheduling going to be? And are you going to stay with what you had? Are you going to introduce a few new things in? Well, we have a lot of clients actually now look at it and realize there have been pop-up tools all over the place, and it's time to consolidate those to a few ones that support the right people. The second is, what artifacts have you got that you trust? So remember Mark saying you have the portfolio report, take it to the boss and ask him if he will bet his career on that. Well, you go and ask the boss, or you talk to the PMO, and you see, what have you got in there? We have risks, issues, for example. When last did anyone update their risk register? How much of these things can be trusted? How many of these things are actually out of date? And that's not the risk standard anymore. We don't use those fields, so everyone's got a spreadsheet. So we look at what have you got, what can you trust, and we create an inventory of what can actually be moved or needs to be refreshed, and we will talk about that, and then moved. Now we get
a great opportunity, by the way, to realign the process that may have been evolving over the years of having Project Online implemented. We see this actually all of the time, where people realize that actually when we set it up originally, we asked for too much data that doesn't end up anywhere. So therefore we consolidate the information, or there may be the need of new data to evaluate new situations. So that alignment of process and really digitizing that process is the great advantage of the Microsoft Power Platform.
Yeah, and this is the opportunity to do it. Yeah. You also then are related to that is, what have you built for you? What organizational specific needs, enhancements, customizations are there? The reporting, as Mark said, is a classic one. We find a lot of clients going through this. Look at it. I found one or two things happens. One is that they realize the reporting, there's so many reports that haven't been used in years. So we create what's actually needed now. It's a fresh look at these things. The other is they realize that the process has moved into Excel because the tool was left behind. As Mark said, the difference between Project Online, difficult to actually change. The new Power Platform is designed to be constantly aligned and realigned to your process. It's simple to change, no code, low code. So when you think of these things, again, I'm not so much giving you a sales pitch here, that sounds like one. I'm trying to explain the reason this new technology exists is because processes change. So that's where Microsoft is taking us down a much better world.
Yeah, and I think it's a general industry shift, right?
Yeah,
I mean, technology 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the implementation of that technology has always been more complex and more technical focused, whereby the recognition of the cloud, where a citizen developer, as Microsoft likes to call it, so a business user needing to amend their business process and digitize that, that's really where the power of the Power Platform comes into place.
Now, another thing, so remember, it's about you moving because you've got to decide why you're moving, but there is always opportunity within this. So one of these is you've got to think of, what new functionality can you take advantage of? So those processes, as you've moved on, as you've matured over the years, do you now do portfolio management? And you didn't have that in the old system. Do you do benefits management? You didn't have it in the old system. So what is in the new system that you can take advantage of? So it is about the opportunity. So to summarize the opportunities here, you have a new approach to scheduling, or many approaches to scheduling potentially. This is not so much about scheduling or task management. It's about supporting more people in the way they need to work or the way they want to work. So it's about that wider audience. Extend your umbrella, bring more people in instead of being a niche tool for a small group of people. And then look at things like strategy, portfolios, programs, work management, task management. If you think about Project Online, it was actually very narrow in what it actually supported. What would if you were in a PMO, what all the functions you actually do? We now have systems that can actually support all of those. Okay, so we're like, yeah, let's go for it. We want to move this thing. Now we go deeper into the detail. One of the questions that was asked around is, how do we move? Are there any automated tools to do this? Because you are moving from, it's kind of apples to oranges here in terms of, it's not from a SharePoint-based system anymore. It's into the Power Platform. It is different. The good news is, yes, we do have automated tools for this. Now, another question was, how will all the data be transferred over? So this is kind of what we're going to talk about now. So first of all, schedules. So you by default are going to have MS Project where you're going to start. We can keep using MS Project. That's not a problem. So we can essentially, as part of out of the box, we can keep having MS Project come over. So no need to panic there. Continue as you were.
It's an out-of-the-box feature where you just simply where it synchronizes it. So you link the project schedule to Altus, and it then just simply synchronizes the data.
That's easy. So and that actually is the big panic point, is because people put a lot of effort into schedules and they can't lose that. You've got your schedule, no problem. The second thing is we come up a layer, we've got the process, the workflow. We have a new workflow tool, but a lot of you, if you're using something like Power PPM, it depends on what you've done. It's all using the newer Microsoft workflow, things like Power Automate. We have some clients with very specific workflows. We can actually move part of the workflow. For others, we recreate it. We use Business Process Flow to do it. It's a very simple way to represent and do a workflow. You get away from that, for those of you the older or out-of-the-box projects online, that old SharePoint workflow, which, by the way, is end of life too. We get away from that and we come to something so much more business appropriate and easy to use. So this is not a problem. Now, besides the schedules, the real most important thing is reports and dashboards. Well, it depends. We have a lot of clients who are able to move their reports from the old to the new. If they reschedule centric reports, etc., they can just be moved. But this is a chance to take stock of what you've actually got, potentially recreate. Some have to be recreated. Some have to just be adjusted. Same report pointing to slightly different data. It depends on how things are being built. We find in reality, most people are doing less migration of reports. It's either, I find it's two extremes. Either they have let's say they have reports that are looking at schedules, they just kind of get moved. But most of them say, look, 3 new bosses have come along, processes change, haven't built a report in 3 years. Please re-automate my Excel for me. And so we start again. It's that opportunity to start fresh and take advantage of a lot of out-of-the-box reports from Altus, but also things like Power BI, and really start again there.
Yeah, and quite often we actually see that, an environment has something like, 10, 15, 20, 25 different reports, but in all reality, they only ever use 3 or 4 reports at most, depending on how you communicate, right?
Yeah. So, as I said, there are opportunities to migrate reports, but because they are coming off different data generally, it is an opportunity to rethink it and reestablish those reports. Go to the boss and say, what do you need to make decisions? Now, those reports have to get data from somewhere. So we've got the schedule, but registers, this is a classic one. So registers, we can pump over. We can move a register. So you've got your risks, your issues, your decisions, your lessons learned, etc. If they are good, intact, you like the fields, you're using them, you're happy, we can then map them over to the new side. We can pump this over directly. We have tools in the Dataverse, which is where the new data is, the new Microsoft Data Store. They can move over. But we do find a lot of people who are at this point saying, actually, we're back into Excel for something, or it happens almost every week when I talk to clients, especially around risks. Then, you know what, there's a new risk standard. We never updated that. Let's just relook at it anyway. If let's say we do relook at it, we can still pump some of that data over. Resources, this is a bit different because resources now are, in a project online world, very much linked into the schedules. You have an opportunity in the new system to do resources on a higher level, on a project level, not only on a schedule level. We have multiple options here. We really need to talk. It's not about moving resources. It's about your approach to resource management going forward. So we can move resources over. When you have MS Project schedules, that will still continue. But because you can move it up to a higher level, migration, less so important, also not important, but less of a migration focus for resources, more on a new approach. And there are simpler ways. You do not have to go and put an assignment or put a resource onto every single task. That gets complicated. The marketing department doing something, the people doing a 2-week operational project don't want to be doing that. So we've got different things to think about there. Finances is similar in that Project Online didn't really have an approach to finances, except doing in the schedule. Complicated. Sensei built something in Power PPM. This essentially maps over conceptually. So we can look at migrating the finances over, because a budget is a budget, a forecast, etc. So we can move this over. Some people do take the opportunity. If they've been doing a spreadsheet, now's the time to get it in there. So again, we can move it, not a problem. So it's an automated move, or we re-look at your approach. Documents, another thing very important to a lot of people. This is quite simple. If you've been using something like in Power PPM, it uses teams, we can keep using those teams. If you have just one big team somewhere and you're putting all the documents into that for the whole IT department, for example, we can link projects to that. So that becomes easy. Or we can look at, if it is moving to something entirely different, we can look at manually moving or potentially with a workflow. But generally, we just, because there's deep integration into teams or out-of-the-box integration to teams, we just link straight to your old team. Timesheets, it'll depend on exactly what system you've got, but if you've got a Sensei version of Project Online, we can move timesheet data over. It's not specifically the timesheet, because we don't need the timesheet. We need the data when we put it into the new timesheet. So these things can move over. If there are other tools in use or in place for timesheets, we need to look at those specifically. So the short answer is, technically migration not a problem. Migration is an opportunity to revisit a few traditionally difficult things like resourcing, finances, etc. Mark.
Fine. Yes, sorry. Steve asked an outstandingly good question.
Yeah.
Is it expected that the reporting and integration hub would be retired in the future, or do they remain supported hybrid implementations? Steve, outstandingly good question. So for those of you who are customers of Sensei and you use either Jumpstart or Empower PPM, which are the basis of that is, of course, the Microsoft Project Online, know that we have a reporting hub and an integration hub. Now, the reporting hub is focused around Project Online. We actually use the information that is stored in the reporting hub and migrate that information through Microsoft Dataverse, which is part of the Power Platform natively, to migrate the data over. Now, long term, we don't envisage that once Project Online is retired, we will ultimately retire, of course, the reporting hub as well, because the reporting hub and the integration hub as such satisfied a need that Project Online did not provide out of the box. The Power Platform actually provides those capability now out of the box even easier. When I talk about integration with other line of business systems, for example, which I know a lot of you have, the Microsoft Power Platform has out-of-the-box connectors that we use these days to migrate or integrate and synchronize data from one environment to another environment. In Project Online, that capability just did not exist natively, hence the reason why we actually developed the reporting hub as well as the integration hub. So I would very much assume that we will actually, over time, we will utilize the data in the reporting hub to migrate the data. Once your data is there, you then have all of the data in the Microsoft Dataverse, which is essentially like the reporting hub, the ability for you to report against it. So that's really how this, in summary, how this works with the integration and the automation behind that.
Technically, the new world is a lot simpler than the old world. You don't have separate SharePoint data from project schedule data. You don't have this concept of necessarily a separate desktop-based scheduling tool. All the admin overhead is simplified, etc. So the need for some of these tools goes away. Okay, so
that's why Microsoft, by the way, doesn't call it a database. They call it a dataverse, because all of the data is actually combined in one big capability, and the data flows with the business process, which is actually very, very unique to siloed databases.
Okay, so if we look at our process going forward, so we've actually spoken about the process. It's basically figure out if you manual or automated, are you going to look at new processes and features, then clean your data. For those of you who are thinking, what can I start doing? Step one, after you've figured out, are you even using this thing? Secondly, clean it up. Then we start mapping the old to the new. feature by feature, process by process, and data by data. We'll then work with you to create an inventory of any data and features you're using and any organizational enhancements and customizations you've got, and we'll figure out what to do with those. You'll find a lot of them are just in the new tool anyway. We then look at your reports and figure out an approach per reports, and then we might look at migrating bits and not bits, but individual streams of data over. So there were questions around how long does it take? Well, how long is a piece of string? Of course, I'm going to say that, but it's not necessarily overly complicated. Yeah, Mark.
Brian, just very quickly, Simon asked, is there a recommendation about migration of historical data, which I think is actually very important. Now, there are actually a couple of ways how you can deal with that, Simon, depending on how much trust you have in historical data. Because the data is actually stored in the data, in the reporting hub, you do have that data available in a database that you can always that you can always report back to. So that's how we would generally deal with historical data. If you say, well, the data is so valuable that I also want that data going forward, then we would migrate that historical data set into Dataverse as long as it has high value. If it's non-trustworthy data, you should really think about, is it worth it, or do I just leave it here for archiving purposes that I can always then re-access if I need to?
You're not losing it because we actually have it, like I said, a copy. So
Yeah.
Microsoft isn't the one who has it. You actually have it in your reporting hub at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we think about how you physically do this. Now, how long is a piece of string? This is completely dependent. We move some clients within a couple of months. Some take many, many months. It all depends on what they're doing. Is it a move or is it a growth at the same time? We start by deploying. Deploying the new tool is so much easier than deploying the old one. It's within a day, it's done. We then go through workshops, as I said, to identify what to clean, how we're going to map things, how we're going to deal with customizations and reports, what data we're going to move or not move. And then also that can take 1 to 2 weeks, but it also depends on, while you're at it, are you like, okay, we also then want to figure out, we're now going to do portfolio management and a new approach to resources, etc. So it can be a migration and a new system project rolled into one. So it depends on what we do. We then
like for like versus enhancement.
Like for like versus enhancement. Now, you'll see there's some recommendations about that, but generally start with like for like, don't boil the ocean, simplify your life, get stable, then enhance. Then we go through sprints to actually move, to prepare this actually. So we may do nothing here. Some clients do nothing because they're like, well, I don't need to change anything. I'm not changing anything. Others actually want between weeks and months of essentially enhancement there. Then we get you ready. This can be done 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the change effort involved. Then we actually move the data. So now we start moving. This can take from days to weeks, depending what we're doing, but generally it's got to be done fairly quickly because you've got to be off the old system and you've got to get into the new one. You can't keep updating the old one while we're moving into the new one. So usually that is, sort of a week or so and it's done. And then we go into support. Overall, technically, this is not a big deal compared to, other projects, IT projects you've done. It's not a massive thing.
I just want to quickly point out that, obviously the important bit is your organizational specific enhancements that you have, and that will ultimately determine the complexity behind the migration as well.
So as we get to the end here, we need to think about, as Mark said, are there enhancements? Is it a like for like? Are we just moving for a technical reason? Or are we trying to solve an actual pain point? There's an opportunity at the same time. Are we trying to increase capability and maturity at the same time? Are we rolling out to new areas? Because these things, once you go beyond like for like, you're actually doing a migration plus a new rollout at the same time. Not a problem, but you've got to sequence it properly. And then how do we start dealing with transitioning over that support? So there were some questions around, what are the sort of risks? I've just put some very obvious ones in here, but we could do this pages with. And we got 15 minutes left, so we wanted to just deal with questions. So first of all, don't treat it as a technical project. There is so much more opportunity than for purely technical like for like. We have a lot of IT departments contacting us and saying, look, we have to move because, you know, contractual licensing, etc. No one asks the business what are they going to get out of it. That's where the real value is. So don't let the tail wag the dog. Turn the dog around, get the business driving this. Don't change as you migrate. So it's okay to need to introduce new functionality, new enhancements, but sequence this that you know you've got success. I moved something that was clean and trustworthy to something new. I can bank that, I've got it, and now I'm going to enhance. Don't try and stay with the past. We have so many people who know they have to migrate, but all they want to do is convince the world why they must use MS Project. And it's usually about MS Project, or why they must do it the way they did it in SharePoint. There are different ways of thinking in the new world. So as much as you can, open up to these new opportunities. Also, some of you have customized. And you had to customize because you had no choice in Project Online. There wasn't a lot of functionality. In our tool, in Altus's case, there is a lot of functionality. All those things, the reason we built it is because you showed the gap when you built the customization. So don't be wedded to your customization. Maybe there's a new way of doing these things in the new tool that you could use, or a new simple way. Instead of making it look, your grid or your whatever, look exactly like it was, Microsoft has new tools that will give you the same functionality in a slightly different way, okay, and probably be better. So this brings us then to the end. So what are you going to have to do next? Well, you're going to have to think about preparing. Now, we will work with you. So if you reach out to myself or to Mark, we will sit with you. We will go through your system with you, and we will basically create that inventory of seeing what you've got so we can start giving you input onto what it's going to take to move these. We'll work with you on what your options are to move forward. These could be to prototype something, to start testing out that new functionality to see what we could actually move into. We'll basically figure out this migration strategy with you, and then eventually at the appropriate point, you can then start with detailed planning and do an actual project to migrate. So you do have years to get ready. You do have people who are here to support you in doing this. So no need to panic, but let's not forget about it either. Okay, now what we want to do is actually open this up to any specific questions.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions here that are already in the chat box. So, that Nailstone as well, in what ways does that differentiate from potential migration to other tools like SAP Project Operations or Project Enterprise Portfolio Management in an SAP sense? Well, look, Neil, ultimately, the question you need to ask yourself is what do you want to achieve from a business point of view? If you only have professional project managers that do high scale projects, that may be an option. We are more than happy to come and see you and work out which is actually the best business option for you. What we can do is, of course, outline what we do with the technology that we are utilizing, and that is, of course, in the wonderful world of Microsoft. So, please, reach out, and we'll be able to assist you there, no doubt. The second question that was asked here from Sashana is, what are the known gaps in IQ schedule tool compared to Project Online? I believe there should be some analysis done up front, which can help. Now, Sashana, the big differentiator here is you actually can utilize and continue to utilize the schedule tool of Project Online, which is namely MS Project. What Sensei and Altus in particular does is it invites all of the different tools, schedule tools that the business has. So for your professional project manager, absolutely, you should use MS Project, and that's important. For your IT staff, you may have Jira or DevOps. You should absolutely use them. What we do is we bring this together to provide the overarching picture. But each of these different tools, execution tools, as I like to call them, or schedule tools, are tools for a purpose. A Microsoft Planner for lightweight project is absolutely appropriate for lightweight project. Project for the web is a tool that allows you to link those. So it's probably not so much a question of what are the gaps between IQ scheduling. Let's not forget the IQ or Altus scheduling is there for users who do not have a schedule tool, and we just incorporate that into Altus, because we want to make sure that all levels of project of users that need to manage projects have a tool. So the Altus schedule tool is a lightweight approach for users that don't have a tool, but of course you should, and if you are happy with MS Project, with all of its capabilities, you should continue use that because that's the appropriate tool for it. When you think about it in a project portfolio management sense, scheduling is only one aspect of the entire management of a project. So therefore, we recognize that in order for us to support all levels of project management maturity, we need to be able to support all of these different execution tools. I hope that answers the question.
There's a continuing question on that.
Yeah.
Asking...
When you say MS Project, are you talking about Project Server or Project Professional? So MS Project is the schedule tool. That's the version that you install as a desktop version on your tool and you do your task management. Project Server and/or Project Online utilizes that as the schedule engine, but allows you also to manage your risks, your issues, your documents, your change requests, your finances, which MS Project as a standalone version does not do. So MS Project as the schedule tool will remain the desktop version. Project Online that enables you to manage all of the other content of your project, that's the part that we are talking about here. So that's the difference between MS Project, the schedule tool, and Project Server or Project Online as the enterprise project management capability that gives you additional capability to MS Project. Our delivery team are reluctant to move financial forecast away from Excel. What other platforms are in common use that are more integrated into PPM? Well, hard to answer this without having to know why you would want to take Excel for financial forecasting. Because financial forecasting often comes as a result of planning your schedule, your resources, your materials. So that may be something we should talk about for your organizational specific need.
And in Excel, it's locked away, hard to report on. Now, there's another question here. Are we constrained by Project for the Web, unable to support? Are we still constrained by Project for the Web, unable to support project baselining? Or does Sensei IQ work directly with MS Project for baselined projects? So the answer is yes. So Sensei IQ or Altus works with MS Project. You can baseline there. So Project Professional, the scheduling tool. In terms of Project for the Web and baselining, this is something, I can't remember if this is out or it's on the roadmap to come out, but this is something that Microsoft was recently talking about again. So I think we're not too far off in terms of that. So again, you have options there.
Yeah. And another one, I'm not familiar with the Sensei Altus solution. Oh, that's so quickly. With the Sensei Altus solution, how does it integrate with business systems? So David, just to answer that question, it's actually the Microsoft Power Platform, namely Power Apps and the underlying Power Platform capability. There are connectors that allow you to create business flows, and these business flows then hook into the line of business system and pull that data and push that data between the systems. So that's in a nutshell what that is. But I encourage you to contact us, and we will definitely be able to look at your specific need there. Can IQ Altus link to directly to MS Project Desktop? Yes is the short answer. There will be deeper integration in the future, though, as well, with synchronization possibilities. But the whole idea, again, is to have schedule tools that you love and that you want to continue to use, and we integrate them with Altus. Ryan, there are all of the I think they are all of the ones in the chat box. Now, maybe do we want to open up?
Let's open up. Yeah, if anyone wants to unmute themselves, feel free to ask any questions you like.
Bring it on. Don't be shy.
We couldn't have done such. We never finish early. We always run over on questions.
That's
so
right. Here, great presentation and transparent acknowledged of what Altus can do. Still confused why you changed the name. That's fair. And our marketing team, I'm sure, will do a much better job than what I did.
Okay, let me give it to you in a simple sense. Which one sounds more grown up? Sensei, and people don't even know how to pronounce it, or Altus, which is actually an elevated name, and the Latin meaning behind it means to elevate. So we are trying to bring your thinking, your data, the importance of your work up a level. It actually has meaning as opposed to Sensei, which did mean teacher, but we're just growing up and going forward.
Yeah, and here, there seems to be a great focus on technology in this conversation without some of the reality of people and process changes need. And I think this is a very good point that you put there, Simon. Look, this presentation, yes, was a presentation around the need of why we change. And really the need right now was because technology changes. But as part of that, the opportunity for us to ensure that you have a 100% user adoption, that you optimize your process and hopefully automate that process, actually forms part of that overarching value that migration can bring. Is there license cost ramifications moving from Empower to IQ Altus, Mark? The short answer is maybe, because it depends what kind of Office 365 Empower platform license you have right now. What I would encourage you to do is contact us directly, and again, we can then talk about that specifically for your organization. There are always variations of what kind of licenses from Microsoft do you have? What kind of licenses do you may not need anymore for that move? So I would think that is part of the planning.
Very generally, in that case, if you're going from Empower PPM forward, you are possibly or potentially probably covered, but it depends. It depends on who else we introduce to the system, what task tools you use, how long that piece of string is.
Altus is a business intelligence tool already. You know what? Altus is a Latin word, and it's actually used quite a bit. For us, it was really the focus on elevating work, and this is really what our vision is for Altus, to make sure that you do the work that matters, and that you reduce the administration and the clutter behind it. So yeah, Altus is not invented. It's not an invented word by us. The Latin people were already much smarter for that. And David Nee wrote, "I preferred IPMO." That's a long time ago.
That was when we had hair, but yeah.
Yeah. What are the rough costs to build a new integration to Workday? Simon, again, I'm happy to actually talk about that in your organization specific need. The question that I always have there is, why would you want to do that? And that's where we may be able to lead you a little bit through how this works. What else do we have? Altus traffic management comes into mind. Exactly, Sarah. We had that too. I actually saw the Altus traffic management too. And I think there are some other comments here. Yeah. We've got 1 more minute for you to open up your mic and ask a pointy question that we try to answer in 30 seconds, or 2 minutes if you want to run over. Fine.
If not, thank you all very much. Gemma will arrange for the deck and the recording to be sent out. There will be another webinar 15th in a month. We do have a few interesting ones coming up. They are so yeah, this year is going to have some real. It's a year of not only just moving our product online, but some real meaningful, valuable new functionality coming.
And please utilize our offer of doing this assessment with you, so that we can actually put some real meat on on what that means for you when it comes to migration. Use that offer. We are happy to spend the day with you, outlining all of the things that we need to think about in your organizational specific environment. So yeah, please utilize that.
We have 5 people in our vision team in this company. Mark and I are part of it. This is what we do. So please utilize it. It is our investment into you as part of that partnership. So go for it.
Definitely. Yeah. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Great job, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks.
Nice one, guys. See ya.